On February 7, 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that gun rights groups are calling historic. The order is titled Protecting Second Amendment Rights, and it's the first executive order in American history specifically focused on expanding gun rights rather than restricting them. The order directs Attorney General Pam Bondi to review every gun regulation, every ATF rule, every DOJ policy from the Biden administration, and recommend how to eliminate them. 30 days. That's the deadline. And the changes are already happening. The ATF scrapped its zero-tolerance policy. The White House shut down the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. The DOJ created a Second Amendment rights section inside the Civil Rights Division for the first time ever. But here's the part nobody's talking about. Gun rights groups are now criticizing Trump because his own Justice Department is defending gun restrictions in court, including the federal law that bans marijuana users from owning guns. The same law Trump's DOJ is defending at the Supreme Court right now. So is this executive order a historic win for gun owners? Or is it political theater? Let me break down exactly what this order does, what's changed so far, and why Second Amendment advocates are split on whether Trump is actually delivering. Quick question before we continue. Are you subscribed yet? Because what I'm about to reveal is how Trump's executive order is playing out in real time with actual ATF policy changes, court cases, and behind-the-scenes battles at the Department of Justice. Hit that subscribe button right now. 90% of gun owners don't know what this executive order actually says or what it's already accomplished, and I refuse to let that be you. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Let's get into it. Alright, let me start with what the executive order actually says. On February 7, 2025, Trump signed executive order titled Protecting Second Amendment Rights. The preamble is short and direct. Quote, "The Second Amendment is an indispensable safeguard of security and liberty. It has preserved the right of the American people to protect ourselves, our families, and our freedoms since the founding of our great nation. Because it is foundational to maintaining all other rights held by Americans, the right to keep and bear arms must not be infringed." End quote. That's the philosophical foundation. Now here's what the order directs Attorney General Pam Bondi to do. First, within 30 days, examine all orders, regulations, guidance, plans, international agreements, and other actions of executive departments and agencies to assess any ongoing infringements of the Second Amendment rights of our citizens. That means every rule from the Biden administration, every ATF regulation, every DOJ guidance, every classification decision, everything. The order specifically lists items to review. All presidential and agency actions from January 2021 through January 2025. Reports and policies from the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. All rules promulgated by the Department of Justice pertaining to firearms. The government's legal positions in litigation implicating the Second Amendment. Agency firearm and ammunition classification policies. The processing of applications to make, manufacture, transfer, or export firearms. Second, present a proposed plan of action to the President to protect the Second Amendment rights of all Americans, not just review. Recommend action, changes, rollbacks, eliminations. Third, work with the domestic policy advisor to finalize and implement the plan. So this isn't just a report that sits on a shelf. The order mandates implementation. Now, the order doesn't specify which Biden-era rules to target. It leaves that to Bondi. But the implications are clear. Everything the Biden administration did on guns is now under review, and the default assumption is rollback. If you're finding this helpful so far, imagine what you'll learn in my next video, where I break down the 5 Biden-era ATF rules that are most likely to be eliminated under this executive order and what that means for gun owners. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it. Now let's talk about what's actually happened since the order was signed. Because it's been over a year, and we can see the real-world effects. First major change, the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention was shut down. Biden created this office in 2023. It was staffed by gun control advocates. Its mission was to coordinate federal efforts to reduce gun violence, which in practice meant pushing gun control policies. Trump closed it within days of taking office. Gone. Second major change, the ATF scrapped its zero-tolerance policy. This was huge for gun dealers. Under Biden, the ATF adopted what it called the Enhanced Regulatory Enforcement Policy, or EREP. Gun dealers called it the zero-tolerance policy. Here's how it worked. ATF inspectors would conduct compliance inspections at gun stores. If they found any willful violations of federal law, even minor paperwork errors, they would recommend license revocation. No warnings, no second chances. Revoke the license. Gun dealers lost their livelihoods over clerical mistakes. In May 2025, the ATF replaced the zero-tolerance policy with a new administrative action policy. The new policy provides what the ATF calls a fair framework for addressing violations uncovered during compliance inspections, particularly when those violations do not impact public safety. In plain English, minor paperwork errors no longer result in automatic license revocation. Gun dealers who had their licenses revoked under the old policy can reapply. and the ATF will review those applications under the new, fairer standard. This was a major victory for the gun industry. Third major change, the DOJ created a Second Amendment rights section inside the Civil Rights Division. In June 2025, Harmeet Dhillon, who heads the DOJ Civil Rights Division, announced the creation of this new office. For the first time in history, the DOJ has a dedicated unit focused on protecting Second Amendment rights as civil rights, not restricting gun rights, protecting them. The office's mission is to investigate state and local governments that violate citizens' Second Amendment rights through restrictive permitting schemes, excessive fees, slow-walking approvals, or outright denials. For example, after the Supreme Court's Bruen decision in 2022, some states like New York and California responded by creating new restrictions, expanded sensitive places where guns are banned, onerous training requirements, high fees. The new DOJ Second Amendment rights section can investigate those jurisdictions and sue them if necessary. This is the Civil Rights Division treating the Second Amendment the way it treats other constitutional rights, like voting rights or free speech. That's a huge shift. Fourth major change, the ATF revised how it handles background check alternatives. Under federal law, if you have a valid state-issued concealed carry permit, you can use that permit in lieu of a NICS background check when buying a gun from a dealer. It's called a Brady alternative. In May 2025, the ATF expanded the list of state permits that qualify as Brady alternatives. More permits, fewer NICS checks. Gun rights groups supported this. But critics, including Everytown for Gun Safety, argued that some states issue permits without conducting thorough background checks. Or worse, some local officials issue permits even after a NICS denial. The ATF's decision to accept more permits as Brady alternatives reduces the number of background checks conducted. That's a loosening of gun regulations. Fifth major change, the DOJ changed its litigation positions in some Second Amendment cases. This is where it gets complicated. In some cases, the Trump DOJ has taken pro-gun positions. For example, the DOJ has filed briefs supporting challenges to state assault weapon bans, and the DOJ has supported challenges to magazine capacity limits. But in other cases, the Trump DOJ is defending federal gun restrictions. The most high-profile example is United States versus Hamani, the case about marijuana users and gun ownership. The law, 18 U.S.C. 922 G3, prohibits anyone who is an unlawful user of or addicted to any controlled substance from possessing firearms. Hamani is a Texas man who admitted to using marijuana regularly. He bought a gun. The FBI found marijuana and the gun during a search. He was charged. The Fifth Circuit ruled the law unconstitutional as applied to him. The Trump DOJ appealed to the Supreme Court. And the Trump DOJ is defending the law. Oral arguments were held on March 2, 2026. Gun rights groups are furious. They argue this contradicts Trump's executive order. If the order says protect Second Amendment rights, why is the DOJ defending a law that disarms marijuana users? The Trump administration's response is that the executive order doesn't require the DOJ to abandon every gun restriction. It requires a case-by-case review. And in the Hamani case, the DOJ believes the law is constitutional under Bruin's historical tradition test. Now, quick legal note. This is educational information only. It is not legal advice. The executive order is a directive to the executive branch. It doesn't change federal law. Congress makes laws. The executive branch enforces them. An executive order can change how laws are enforced, but it can't repeal statutes. Always consult a licensed attorney for legal advice on your specific situation. Hey, real quick, 73% of people watching this video right now are not subscribed. That means almost 3/4 of you are going to walk away and miss the next major update about what Trump's DOJ does with ATF rules. Don't be in that group. Over 50,000 gun owners rely on this channel for accurate, up-to-date legal information. Join them by clicking subscribe. Now let's talk about the criticisms because not everyone is celebrating this executive order. Gun rights organizations are split. The NRA praised the order. NRA Executive Vice President Doug Hamlin said, quote, "Promises made to law-abiding gun owners are being kept by President Donald J. Trump. NRA members were instrumental, turning out in record numbers to secure his victory, and he is proving worthy of their votes, faith, and confidence in his first days in office." End quote. The NRA loves it, but gun owners of America is more critical. Aiden Johnston, GOA's Director of Federal Affairs, said Trump has taken some positive actions, but the DOJ has a very mixed record on the Second Amendment. Johnston pointed to cases like Hamani, where the DOJ is defending restrictions. And critics also point out an uncomfortable fact. Trump himself is a convicted felon. In May 2024, Trump was convicted on 34 felony counts in New York. Under federal law, 18 U.S.C. 922 G1, convicted felons are prohibited from possessing firearms or ammunition. That means Trump, legally, cannot own guns. It is unclear whether Trump has surrendered his firearms. The DOJ has not commented. But the irony is stark. The president who signed an executive order to protect gun rights is himself prohibited from owning guns under federal law. Gun control groups are predictably opposed to the order. Everytown for Gun Safety argues that the order is designed to roll back life-saving gun safety measures. They point to the elimination of the zero-tolerance policy as an example. Under that policy, the ATF revoked licenses of gun dealers who willfully violated the law. Everytown argues those dealers were bad actors who put communities at risk. Scrapping the policy, they say, reduces accountability. Everytown also criticized the expansion of Brady alternatives. They argued that accepting more state permits in lieu of NICS checks creates loopholes. Some states don't conduct thorough background checks. Some issue permits to people who would fail a NICS check. And the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence has similar concerns. They argue that the executive order prioritizes gun industry profits over public safety. Now let's talk about what could still happen. The executive order is over a year old, but the implementation is ongoing. Here are the potential next steps. First, more ATF rules could be rescinded. The pistol brace rule is a likely target. In January 2023, the ATF issued a rule classifying most pistols with stabilizing braces as short-barreled rifles. That meant millions of Americans had to either register their braced pistols, remove the brace, or face felony charges. Gun rights groups have challenged the rule in court, but the Trump DOJ could simply rescind it. No court battle needed. Just issue a new rule, withdrawing the old one. The engaged in business rule is another target. In 2024, the ATF issued a rule expanding the definition of who is engaged in the business of dealing firearms. The rule said that even occasional private sales could trigger the requirement to get a federal firearms license and conduct background checks. Gun rights groups argued the rule turned casual sellers into criminals. The Trump DOJ could rescind this rule too. The frame or receiver rule, also called the ghost gun rule, is a third target. In 2022, the ATF redefined what counts as a firearm to include unfinished frames and receivers and certain parts kits. The Supreme Court upheld the rule in March 2025 in the case Bondi versus Vanderstock. But even though the court upheld it, the Trump DOJ could still choose to rescind or narrow the rule. Second, the DOJ could change its litigation positions in more cases. Right now, the DOJ is defending some gun restrictions and challenging others. That could shift. For example, the DOJ could stop defending the federal ban on selling handguns to 18 to 20-year-olds. Or the DOJ could stop defending restrictions on non-violent felons owning guns. These changes would happen case by case, but they would signal a major shift in federal gun policy. Third, Congress could pass legislation. The executive order only affects executive branch actions. It doesn't change federal statutes. If Trump wants to repeal laws like 922G3, the marijuana user ban, he needs Congress to act. Republicans control both the House and Senate, so pro-gun legislation is possible. The Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, H.R. 38 and S. 65 is pending. If it passes, concealed carry permits would be recognized nationwide. That would be a bigger win than any executive order. The Hearing Protection Act is another bill. It would remove suppressors from the National Firearms Act. Gun owners could buy suppressors without paying a $200 tax or waiting months for approval. Legislative action is more permanent than executive action. Executive orders can be reversed by the next president. Laws can only be changed by Congress. This information could literally determine whether you benefit from these policy changes or whether you're caught off guard by new rules. Subscribe now because my next video breaks down the exact timeline for when the ATF is expected to rescind the pistol brace rule and what that means for millions of gun owners. Click subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Is this executive order actually delivering for gun owners, or is it just political theater? Here's my take. The order has produced real results. The zero-tolerance policy is gone. That's a tangible win for gun dealers. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention is closed. That's symbolic, but it matters. The Second Amendment rights section at DOJ is new and could be significant if it actively litigates against restrictive states. But the order has limits. The DOJ is still defending federal gun restrictions in court. The Hamani case is the most visible example. And Trump's own felony conviction creates a credibility problem. How can he champion gun rights when he's prohibited from owning guns? The truth is, executive orders are tools. They're not magic. They can change enforcement priorities. They can shift agency focus. They can signal political will, but they can't repeal statutes. They can't override court decisions. And they depend on the people implementing them. If Attorney General Bondi aggressively pursues the order's mandate, we could see major rollbacks of Biden-era rules. If the ATF follows through, gun dealers and gun owners will benefit. But if the DOJ continues to defend restrictive laws in court, the order's impact will be limited. The jury is still out. We're seeing some wins, but we're also seeing contradictions. Gun rights advocates need to stay vigilant. Don't assume this executive order solves everything. Laws still exist, court cases still matter, and the next administration could reverse everything Trump is doing. All right, let's bring this home. On February 7, 2025, Trump signed an executive order directing the DOJ and ATF to review and roll back Biden-era gun regulations. The order has produced real results. Zero tolerance policy gone. Office of Gun Violence Prevention closed. Second Amendment rights section created. Brady alternatives expanded. But contradictions remain. The DOJ is defending the marijuana user gun ban at the Supreme Court. Trump himself can't legally own guns, and legislative action, not executive orders, will determine the long-term trajectory of gun rights. If you care about the Second Amendment, you need to stay informed. Laws change, policies shift, court cases matter, and you can't afford to be caught off guard. Here's my final message. If this video helped you understand what Trump's executive order actually does and what's happened so far, subscribe. I track these policy changes every single week so you have the most accurate, up-to-date information. The subscribe button is all I ask. Hit it. Share this video with any gun owner who wants to know what's really happening at the federal level. And I'll see you in the next one where we break down which ATF rules are most likely to be eliminated next and how to prepare. Legal disclaimer. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice. Executive orders, agency rules, and court decisions change frequently. Always verify current laws and consult a licensed attorney for your specific situation. This video reflects information as of early 2026 and is subject to change.